Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of the Kiln Rendez-Vous. Today we have the pleasure of having Nanak Nihal from the Human Network. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks. How are you?
Doing great here in Paris at the office. I want to kick things off by asking you a bit about your personal background. Could you tell us a bit like how you started in the crypto space and how you ended up working for the Holonym Foundation and on the Human Network?
Yeah. So I actually had maybe an unusual path to crypto where I met my co-founder. We were both doing computational cognitive neuroscience at Georgetown. He was getting his PhD, I was getting my master's, and we did a hackathon. He led a hackathon project where we put data on IPFS. We put neuroscience data because there's a huge issue in data sharing where you have these like large data sets over a terabyte and you don't know how to exactly share them with their labs. It's like, a lot of this data ends up very closed, only accessible to one lab. So he led a hackathon project about putting it on IPFS. And this showed me that crypto had use cases beyond just trading and speculation. And I had done a bit of that before too. I had some fun writing trading bots and use that as a way to learn a bit about machine learning. And, just it was a fun learning experience, made a little bit of money. But this really got me into the builder side. So we ended up building a project afterwards, a decentralized identity project to put scientist data on the blockchain. We went to East Denver to flesh this out and build that as a hackathon project. This is like many years ago, I think 2020 or 2021. And yeah, people seem to want identity. So we thought, okay, well, great. Like we've always wanted to build something a bit bigger, like, either a startup or a nonprofit. And this seemed like a technology that people would need. So we doubled down on it, started building more identity tools, eventually got into cryptography because before I launched it, we had a little bit of concerns about the privacy guarantees that we were giving users, which were not that strong without cryptography, by putting, too much scientist data on chain. So we started doing ZK stuff. We started working with Lobby 3, which was US presidential candidate Andrew Yang's DAO. Like that got us started. That kind of showed us, okay, look, there's actual demand for privacy-preserving proof of identity on chain. So we got into ZK privacy and started building for other use cases.
Nice. Now, real quick for us, like, could you just remind the audience, like, what is decentralized identity, proof of humanhood, things like that, and like really go deep into like why this is something that's important for our space?
Yeah. So if you look at what decentralization does, it shifts the power dynamic. Instead of having one centralized entity that has the power, it's either distributed amongst different nodes or amongst different individuals. And if you look at where we want that power dynamic, part of it is in the financial system, hence decentralized finance. That gives you a lot of benefits, different permissionless ways of making money, making yield. Permissionless access to finance is another important one. Making sure there are no gatekeepers saying, you need to be in this country and you need like a country with a banking system, with a government ID system to join. And so ID is very useful in situations where, people don't always have a government issued ID, and some government issued IDs are not very strong. Like they can be forged easily, right? So decentralized ID can actually present a really good alternative in those cases. Decentralized ID is also really helpful for preventing data breaches. This is something that we're very focused on with the Human ID product. So when you give your identity, your social security number to like 20 different websites a year, one of them is probably going to get hacked, right? And that's our current status quo. We often get our data breached because there are these huge stockpiles of user data. And, companies do want user data when it comes to like anything that can be useful for advertising. A lot of companies want that. A lot of companies do not really want your government ID data. Like, that's more liability. Like, they're not going to do much with your social security number. They just have to store it really securely and then face major repercussions when somebody hacks them and leaks it. So this is a really great place for decentralized identity, especially with ZK and MPC. It turns out you need a lot of cryptographic primitives to solve this problem and give sufficient compliance guarantees. But yeah, eliminating the risk of data breaches is another great use case.
Super nice. I guess like, could you like kind of remind us like what was the context of like proof of personhood like before a human network, and like how like human network like kind of fitted in to like the development of this technology? I know you guys were previously called Mishti. If you also want to talk about like why you decided to rebrand, that would also be super interesting.
Yeah. So human network, what it does for both proof of personhood and just like privacy in general, is it allows human keys. And human keys are this term that represents a key derived from human attributes. So you want to derive a key from your face, for example, or from your passwords, security questions, these other things that sort of represent either knowledge you have, like something you know, something you have, something you are. And, maybe it's something as simple as like your Google account that you want to derive a key from, but it could be more complicated. It could be a password, be a face. And the thing is, there's no good way to, until human network, there's no good way to actually get a random key from that, because your face is not random, your passwords are not random, your security questions are not random, your web accounts are not random. These things can all easily be like guessed if you have a computer guessing a trillion things at once. So there is a cryptographic algorithm called oblivious pseudorandom function, and this typically operates between a user and a server. But with human network, we actually decentralize the server. And so we're able to offer this oblivious pseudorandom function. And what it does is there's a key held by the network that's like very, very random. And there's a user's input, which is not very random. The way OPRF works is it uses the key's randomness in the network to add randomness to the user's data in a way that never sees the user's data. So it's oblivious to the user's data, and the user is oblivious to the network's key. So that's what the OPRF does. And practically what this actually unlocks is it unlocks a greater level of security and privacy and self-custody. So now you can have keys that nobody else knows based on your private data, like your own attributes, your security questions, passwords, web accounts, biometrics, or any combination of the above. So this is really helpful in allowing you to have something that's self-custodial and also easy to generate a key from. So this is really useful for wallets, for example. Now, for privacy, human keys are really useful for this very complicated thing called nullifiers. So nullifiers are an important part of both privacy and proof of personhood use cases. You need to make sure each person has one unique identifier that they can't use twice. And there's a difficult question, though, of how you generate this nullifier without knowing the user data, and like generate in a way that doesn't reveal the user data. Can't be reversed to find the user data. You can't just like take a simple, cryptographic hash of the user data, which is a common approach. And it's the best it's existed, but you can easily reverse that hash to find the user from some database. So this adds privacy to proof of personhood use cases, and to just like any sort of like ZK voting, identity use cases.
Nice. You already a bit touched on the subject, but I would love if you could explain also the topic of entropy in the context of like proof of personhood methods, and why like the current like low entropy solutions have like basically like problems. You already like mentioned this, but if you go to a bit deeper into like what would be like the highest entropy solution, for example, that would be very interesting.
Yeah. So generally, in in the current world, assuming quantum computers are not a threat, you want at least 128 bits of entropy for most use cases. So what that means in real life terms is like, think of randomness. If you flip a coin, that's 1 bit of entropy because it's either 1 or 0, heads or tails. And it's random. You don't know which one it's going to be. So it's, randomly 1 bit of entropy. If you flip a coin twice, that's 2 bits of entropy. Either get heads, tails, heads. Tails, heads, or tails. Those are 4 options. 2 squared, you get 2 bits of entropy. Flip a coin 3 times, you get 3 bits of entropy. 4 times, you get 4 bits of entropy. So entropy is basically just like randomness, and measuring it in bits just means like the log 2 of it, of like how many options there are. So long story short, however many times you flip a coin, that's how many bits of entropy there are. 128 bits of entropy doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a crazy amount. Like, I think it's more atoms than there are in the universe, or there's some more grains of sand than there are in the world. Some crazy number. Because 2 to the 120th power is actually a very, very large number. And the thing is, if you have that many options to guess from, there is just no way a computer, except a quantum computer maybe, in certain situations can guess that many options at once.
Great. And now if we go back into like the concept of like these human keys, those are basically like a form of like cryptographic keys that like have like input as like human generated data as like input, and you guys like you use like some cryptography to add some randomness and to increase the entropy.
Exactly, yeah. So when something is low entropy, say password, on average, and actually this is a big problem that I think is not discussed enough. On average, passwords have 40 bits of entropy, which means you can guess them into the 40 tries. And like, this is very, very feasible on a computer. 2 to the 40 is, it's a big number, but like your computer can do that. Like even your laptop can guess it, 2 to 40 tries. So this is a bit concerning how much faith we place in passwords. And, a lot of people, they do some extra mechanisms such as like PBKDF2 and other key derivation functions. For example, most crypto wallets will do this in addition to the password to add like a little bit more entropy. Maybe get like, 50 bits of entropy or something. But it's still easy to crack. So one thing to note is if you're backing up your wallet seed phrase with a password to encrypt it, which many wallets do, many wallets encourage you to do, I would not consider that backup secure unless it's like a very high entropy random password. The problem is with more entropy, something's harder to memorize. Like that's the nature of entropy. It's more random. We love finding order in things. If you just have 2 bits to memorize, it's, not too bad. It's a little bit hard to quantify with passwords how much entropy they have, how memorable they are, because sometimes something's more memorable with one versus another. That's like a cheat code you can do to get a higher entropy password. But yeah, the low entropy. So human network, what it does is puts these, let's say you have a bad password, you put it through OPRF, the human network, and then what you get is something that looks very random. And to anybody who doesn't have the key of the network, it looks like it has 128 bits of entropy or more. Because they're just, it's just, it just looks random, really. And in order to brute force it, you can't just do it on your own machine 2 to the 40 times. You have to query the network 2 to the 40 times, which is like not possible. I mean, there are, the network can have sorts of economic mechanisms, can have like a smart contract that limits guesses, it can have rate limits, it can have just a simple price to query it will deter a lot of brute force attacks, So you can implement stuff like that to prevent this brute forcing.
Super nice. Yeah, so I guess like this makes like the human network like very like extremely important to because like basically like the data that would become like the cryptographic keys that would be generated by the human network would be like extremely hard to fake again, and so people using like the human keys will be extremely dependent on the future of the human network. So I guess like it could be extremely valuable. Like I guess maybe a stupid question, but like is there like a way to like recover like a human key if the human network goes down?
It's a good question. So if the human network goes down and the key is not backed up, then there's no way. But we have a key backup mechanism in the MISTI node software. So the key backup mechanism keeps the key for a limited amount of time, or it keeps the whatever share of the key the node has, it keeps that for a limited amount of time. So let's say the node goes down. As long as there is an honest majority of nodes that had the key recently, then it's fine. And to start off, we're adding training wheels that keep the backup even longer. And then, as we see that the network is, being as expected, we can lower that window to whatever parameters are safe.
Got it. And you need this kind of like backup mechanism to reconstruct the key so that operators will not be able to like collude and recreate the key from nothing.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So there is a trade-off, right, between these properties of robustness and secrecy. When you have a key that's distributed amongst a bunch of nodes, and you can set the thresholds to recover it. So let's say you need like 9 out of 10 nodes to recover the key. This means that, it's going to be very unlikely for the nodes to collude because you need 9 of them out of 10 to be malicious in order to like steal the key of the network. So that's great. But that also means if more than one goes down, you can never reconstruct the key again. And it's just as bad for the end user. So on the other end, you can have 1 out of 10, but then you just need one node to be corrupt. Your key's not going to get lost, but it's probably going to get stolen by one corrupt node. So, this is not ideal either. So, yeah, there's like a fine-tuning of the threshold parameter. A lot of people do either like 50% or like 2/3 of the network. Being honest, these are like common thresholds that I think make sense to a lot of people. So yeah, it depends on the threshold. If the threshold's met, then you can reconstruct the key.
I think it's something that would be interesting to tie into like my next question, which is like, how do you guys like leverage restaking protocols like Symbiotic to enforce like specific constraints on operators to make sure they fulfill the task that they should, that they don't collude, and that basically like the users of the human network and the human keys would not be affected by like potential misbehaviors from the operators.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Symbiotic and restaking protocols is they've accidentally created a permissionless reputation system for operators. Because if you look at the top end operators, like they're going to be doxxed, they're going to be, dealing with a lot of money. You can trust them for all these social reasons to be honest, social and economic reasons to be honest. But this is permissionless. It's not like some centralized company said, okay, here are the top operators. So this is a really cool system, and this is actually the main mechanism that we're using to secure the network. Because threshold cryptography has like one huge issue, which has prevented it from being decentralized typically, which is that of collusion. If you have, whatever the threshold is, say 2/3 of the nodes colluding, stealing the key, not only is it devastating, but it's also impossible to trace which ones did it. So you can't slash them. You just the thing is, there's so many ways they can collude. It's hard to enumerate all of them before in order to like detect colluding behavior. So that's one way of preventing slashing from meaningfully happening with threshold cryptography. It's just there are so many ways to do this bad thing of colluding. The other way is that once you have successfully colluded, you can frame anybody. You can reconstruct the key shares of every other node in the network. So let's say there is some like pattern of messages that indicates collusion. You can spoof those messages on behalf of the other nodes in the network. So this is really annoying for designing a decentralized threshold network. And restaking has finally solved this accidentally, in my opinion, by having this permissionless pool of like good actors.
Nice, but in a way, like this permissionless pool of good actors, like could turn bad, like in an instant. And what these restaking platforms have built is also like a way for networks to find like objective offense that they can slash in case that happens. Do you is this something that you guys leverage or think you will leverage in the future for the human network?
Yeah, I think we could leverage slashing for, and there are many things we could leverage it for, like enforcing good behavior. Like we can't use it during collusion, but we can use it to ensure that the operators are like actually giving the correct output, that they're responding, they have like good enough uptime. They're not like, slowing down the network or doing other sorts of detrimental behavior.
Yes. And going a bit into like a simpler question, like a more practical question for the audience of restakers that listens to this podcast. Do you already have an idea of like what type of collateral your network will accept on Symbiotic? And will that evolve in the future? And I guess like a question that is tied to this question is how much economic security do you think your protocol needs?
Yeah, we're open to pretty much any stable collateral, whether it's Ethereum, Bitcoin, stable coins. Like mostly those, we don't want something super volatile that could change the, if we take too much of some like, small market cap coin, then there will be slight concern that the nodes who have like more stake, like suddenly, fluctuate. And maybe these nodes that like aren't ready to be very involved or very involved all of a sudden. Or even like nodes that are less honest could be involved all of a sudden. So as long as assets are not like super unstable, we are happy to accept them.
Nice. Yeah, makes sense. And I guess on the other side of this equation is like the incentives. Like what is your plan for value accrual to the restakers and operators that provide the economic security to maintain the human network? Will you have like I guess like fee at the user level that those basically will accrue to these participants?
Yeah. So we plan to have fees in the network at some point for querying the OPRF and for just querying the human network in general. We also are doing a point system for operators to incentivize securing the network.
Nice. Also, like, could you tie into like the broader vision of the Holonym Foundation that I guess incubated the human network? What was the vision on which like this foundation was created, and what do you think its broad impact will be in a couple of years for crypto or even beyond?
Yeah. So Holonym Foundation, its vision is creating humanistic technology. So we launched a suite of tools called Human Tech. That includes Human Network, Human ID, Human Wallet, and Human Passport, which we recently acquired from Bitcoin Passport. And these essentially offer different digital rights online. So Human ID offers the right to privacy, Human Wallet offers the right to security, and Human Passport offers the right to personhood. And all of these contribute to the right of economic flourishing. So our long-term vision is not just in crypto. We see these tools as in the short term helping out the crypto market. Even now, we're exploring use cases for people who have never heard of crypto or don't even know how to use like a phone. So we're exploring use cases in the global south because we think this is where a lot of digital rights really matter. When you don't have a good identity system, you don't have a good banking system. You need, we're spoiled here. We're like, crypto is no use case. But then if you look at countries that are actually using crypto, they're using it to hedge against like very real inflation of their currency, like super high inflation in some countries. They're using it for paying across borders. They're using it because their financial system is heavily censored for even like basic things. So we see the Human Tech suite of tools being really useful in general, but especially in countries that don't have those rights.
Nice. And I guess like, can you talk a bit further about like the use cases that you guys like focus on at the Holonym Foundation? And do these use cases like go even broader than what's enabled by the human network? I guess like, is there like if you could think of like one crypto use case that you think is the most important piece that you enable, and one like real life use case within parallel.
Yeah, great question. So a crypto use case that I really like, beyond, I mean, I think a lot of people know we do proof of personhood and probably no need to explain that. But one that people don't know we do is with Human Wallet, preventing blind signing while still having a very easy user experience. So if you look at the recent Bybit attack, and actually in the last podcast I was in, I was talking about, man, there are like $70 billion of money in safe, and they're all in this one UI. Hopefully UI doesn't get compromised. And it was a very tragic event. Luckily users are okay. Just more tragic that North Korea can make more nukes. But it woke up the crypto space to the fact that blindsiding is very real, that our current security paradigms are not right. Like our best practices, just use hardware wallets with safes, you'll be fine. Like that's not true. You have to use hardware wallets on safes with separate devices. Now that's like the current paradigm, which is good for security, but for UX, it's not really too practical. So with Human Wallet, we're actually launching a feature like this week, basically whenever the Chrome Web Store approves it, that allows you to show the actual message on your hardware wallet what you're signing. So this is a very crypto-native use case, but it could have saved $1.5 billion in this case, because the way Human Wallet works, so part of it uses Human Network to generate the user's key share. Part of it uses like our secure enclave to generate the server's key share. And soon we're decentralizing that actually. But yeah, for now, even while the server is centralized, quote unquote, it cannot see your private key. It's completely self-custodial because it cannot spend on your behalf. It can only be it's like a security protector. You can think of our server that way. So it's running in a secure enclave that's set up like very robustly with some very paranoid setups. And it's running multiple transaction simulations from different providers or APIs once. And it's communicating directly with your hardware wallet so that your hardware wallet knows what to sign. Right? So you see a personal sign message on your hardware wallet instead of seeing the random data that people are used to signing away other assets from. So yeah, we're super excited about this as a Web3 data feature. And just in general, a cool thing about this is it's not a browser extension. We want this to be accessible to people who are not in crypto. Yes, if you want that feature, you do need a hardware wallet. If you want that intense security feature, you don't have to have that intense security feature. You can still get other very great security features without buying a hardware wallet. And, you don't need an extension for it. You can just sign up with the password, with the Google account. Soon we're adding login with Face ID for countries that, a lot of countries, people don't have government IDs or access to phone numbers or your emails. And they could lose access to their phone number or email, and because they can't recover it without a good ID system. They can't recover their email or phone. So then they can't recover their wallet, right? So Face ID based wallets are super exciting for those countries. So we're also launching that feature. So we're basically making it as easy to use as possible and as secure as possible. As far as use cases outside of Web3, I think that's, it's another big one. So we're currently partnering with an organization, Refinite, in Africa, who is working with 113 million refugees to give them identities. And it's really hard to do it with centralized ID. And we're using this Face ID wallet for them as well. So I think Face ID wallet is super exciting because, they have phones, right, in Africa, but they lose their phones. And then they need some other way of recovering it. And we explored a way based on tribal leadership, which is very interesting. And now we're also exploring the Face ID.
Very nice. I had another interesting question around, I guess how you guys deal with privacy in a more B2B setting. One thing that was very interesting with privacy over the past years in crypto is that they've seen great privacy tech, but we've also seen a lot of backlash against these privacy solutions because of I guess paranoia from government actors and the lack of compliance. How do you deal with the constraint of compliance when building a privacy solution?
So human network, actually, in this case, we don't discuss that much of it, is compliance. Because, so human network is decentralized. You can control, though, the decryption. It has three methods. One is for the OPRF, which we talked a lot about. Another one, which we talked a little bit about, is driving a key from a web account, which is similar to OPRF, but slightly different in some small technical ways. And then the other one, which is very different, is encryption. So you can actually encrypt data to human network. And you can do this over ZK-friendly curves. Why do you want to do this? What does this mean? It means that you can prove that you have encrypted data to human network in a ZK proof. So proving you've encrypted data to human network enables use cases like proving that, okay, not only am I over 21 and, I'm not from a sanctioned country and I'm from a country allowed to use the DeFi protocol, but also I've encrypted my data to human network and set this smart contract to determine when my data can be decrypted. So this is really key for compliance. If you look at, for example, Internet Cache developers got arrested because they built a really great privacy tool, which I really like, but unfortunately it allowed North Korea to launder funds, and the government wanted to crack down. The thing is, they could not decrypt the data. Their governments always want access to, in case of some investigation, suspected crime, they want either the company to be able to investigate this data and see who is behind it. The company can't say, hey, look, we don't know, it's a decentralized protocol, we don't know who went through it. That didn't really fly in the case of Tornado Cash, sadly. So the question is, can any ZK protocol do that? Because the whole point of ZK is only the user with the data knows their data. If there's no company holding the data, how do they share it to the government. And the thing is, with a decentralized threshold network, you can actually have really good balance of privacy and compliance, where you remove the carte blanche surveillance of like a centralized company holding all the data. Instead, you let users opt into their data being shared essentially with certain smart contracts, which control who can see their data and when. So one contract could say, I will release the data only when like this multi-sig of like legal vehicles or whatever have signed off on it, and these aren't countries, whatever. Another one can say, okay, I will allow 25 decryptions a day. Like there's no way that you need to investigate more than 25 people a day. But like, within that range, sure. Still prevent surveillance, still prevent data breaches, but like allow that decryption of people who might actually be criminals. So this is up to the developer what sort of conditions they want. But this allows you to take, with this you could build Tornado Cash, but have like a decryption mechanism for the transaction, where say like, if this multi-sig votes, then it can decrypt up to like 10 transactions a day on Tornado Cash. Yeah.
Nice. Before we close this, I wanted to ask you, like, outside of like what you're working with at the Holonym Foundation, what is like the topic that you find most interesting in the crypto space?
Yeah. I find digital rights the most interesting. I think right now people are really concerned with actual use cases of crypto. After Hubbard launched a meme coin, and then all of a sudden we're like, we don't like meme coins. It was actually pretty crazy how overnight just like everybody was like, we're done with meme coins. Yeah, I always wonder like what mechanism either algorithmically or like socially got everybody to be against meme coins overnight. But it was an interesting phenomenon, and now people are finally interested in real use cases, and I'm like, cool, like I kind of figured this would happen at some point. Glad it's happening now. The question is, what use cases does crypto actually have? There's a lot of cynicism that crypto has no use cases, because most of our crypto news comes from the West, and we hear about like Trump coin, we hear about all that stuff. We don't hear about it silently being used for like somewhat boring things across the world, and we tend to be very skeptical of those things, thinking they're just like PR stunts of the companies involved. But no, actually, like there really are great use cases for for crypto in developing countries, and that to me is most interesting. Those are the next directions that we want to take company, something like I've been very passionate about for a while, and like trying to find like meaningful use cases there, because that's where digital rights matter, and in cryptography, that's what it enables.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think sometimes like the crypto bros are losing their ways, and sometimes it's very important to go back to the basics of the crypto project philosophy and like what really created this entire space. I always love I always say that I love to rewatch those old Andreas Antonovoulos podcasts to remind me of like why I'm in the space. But really appreciated your answer there. Before we close this, like, could you share with our audience like any like interesting resource that they could use to learn more about what you guys are building, and maybe like if you want to share your socials so people could follow you, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is human.tech. Do follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter is 0x Holonym. And yeah, you can also follow me on Twitter. I'm Nanak Nihal. our docs.holonym.id.
Cool stuff, man. Thanks for the conversation. It was really, really interesting. Looking forward to support the network when things start to become very interesting on mainnet. Definitely looking forward to it. Thanks again for coming on the podcast, and to the audience, thanks for watching.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Pleasure.